It's not as fun without the Cabernet, I'll tell you that much.
Nothing is as fun without the Cabernet.
We could have done like a Bloody Mary or something.
Yeah. I hate tomato juice, but we would have done screwdrivers instead.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
That takes me back to my college days.
Oh, man. I think everybody got sick on those early on.
Even in Mardi Gras, we would do the beer and orange juice, which is disgusting.
Oh.
But we would do it anyways.
The pictures out of New Orleans this week, that is so trippy.
Right? The snow.
So trippy, and not a little snow.
Yeah.
Like they had a blizzard warning.
I know, right?
It's insane. I think I told you I have family down there.
Oh yeah, that's right.
My cousins.
Are they in New Orleans or Greater Louisiana?
They're in New Orleans, but in where were they on? They were on a road called Mercedes Boulevard, a little more suburban part.
Yeah.
But my uncle was the vice president of a bank. He's long since passed, but he was vice president of a bank downtown. So when we went there, we visited a couple times, and we went to Mardi Gras. Yeah. And they had their own reviewing stand for them and their guests.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was way less raunchy than it is today.
Well, but even then, like Mardi Gras, if you're local and you go uptown, it's a different experience than what you picture happens downtown in the French Quarter.
Yeah.
Like it's a very kid-friendly event.
Oh yeah, I still have beads and coins for the crews throughout, and we had such a good time.
We're gonna take our kids. We're gonna wait. My youngest is 4, so we'll wait till he's a little older.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna take them because I think it's America's last true festival. Like there's no corporate takeovers, no advertising. Yep. It's very organic and natural. And
we had so much fun.
And if you know locals like your uncle, like it's a whole different experience.
Yep. And I think we went to one crew party.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that they.
I've never done it. Never done like a.
It was really cool.
Float or done a crew party.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Because you end up do the ball at the end too. And like that's a whole other experience.
It was good stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned to not like Pop Rouge. They drank Pop Rouge.
What's Pop Rouge?
It was some bubblegum flavored soda. It was nauseating, and they swilled it by the gallon.
Everything down there is so bad for you. I love it. I love it. So it's like it was the most fun I had living there, and I will never move back.
Yeah.
But I sure love to visit.
Oh my God, beignets. I could eat beignets all day long.
So I'll share this with everybody. My trick for Cafe Du Monde, like if you go there and it's a busy time, there's like an hour wait to get a table, and there's like an hour wait on the to-go side. And it's run by a bunch of Vietnamese. I don't know if it's one family or friends of families, but they're all Vietnamese. Yeah. A lot of them are younger boys, especially the bussers. And they'll go on smoke break pretty close to where the lines are. And so I'll go up to one of the kids and I'll say like, hey, I got $20 for you and then $20 for an order of beignets and 2 cafe au laits if you just grab them for us. They'll put their cigarette out, take the money, they go. 5 minutes later, they come back with my beignets and cafe au laits, and then I just go sit along the Mississippi and watch the boats go by and skip the line. Yeah.
I do have to say that even as a little kid, because I was probably there when I think the first time when I was 11, and when we walked by one of the levees, and I was like, so the water is up there and we're here? I go,
you're looking up to the boats,
right?
Like,
I don't think this makes sense. I think we should stay a little while and then go. Yeah.
Great place to visit.
Yeah, we loved it.
So how you doing? We're here to what? Talk about state of the CIO?
We're here to talk about whatever you want to talk about, Rick. State of the world, state of CIO.
It's funny, I prepped for state of the CIO, but you said you just went over the AI report too.
AI priority survey, yeah.
We got a lot to talk about.
We do have a lot to talk about.
So before we get into like looking ahead, what were your thoughts on last year? It's just like the market, IT buyers, marketers. I mean, you kind of saw it all.
I think last year is a fascinating year. We're in the midst of something that happens only generationally, which is this amazing shift around a new technology, AI. Mm-hmm. So we saw this obviously with mobile, with the cloud, with the internet, even farther back, when we had the PC revolution. We have these periods of time where something new causes change that ripples throughout everything we do. And we can talk some more about that, how AI is influencing everything. But I think for marketers, it changes the game as well, because now there's this urgency around positioning your company amidst a whole new landscape. And one of the things that we saw in the AI priority survey was that, and I think it was a fascinating question to ask, I'm really glad we did you meet with or talk with new vendors because they have new AI capabilities in their product set? And virtually everyone did, whether it was 1 to 3 new vendors all the way up to more than 7 or 8 new vendors. And then there was a follow-on that said, will you be continuing to engage with them in the coming year? So it wasn't just a flyby where I looked at a brochure or asked a couple of questions. Almost 80% of them said either some of those companies or all of those companies we're going to continue to engage in. So you see, not only is the technology fascinating, the ways customers use it are fascinating, and the things they're learning and struggling with, but also the way it's going to change the industry. Billions and billions and billions of dollars in venture money that's gone into AI-backed companies. And so those are new competitors, whether they're targeting healthcare, targeting financial services, targeting manufacturing, whatever, but also how it'll change the dynamic between existing competitors. So if somebody enriches their products and services that provide more automation, provide more productivity for the people who are using it, that can change the dynamic with a market leader and really, upset the apple cart. So I think it's just fascinating when you have these generational shifts to see how it affects what you're saying, who you're competing against, what you're selling, how you support that, what your partner ecosystem is. That's your area of expertise, partners, right? It's going to change all of that. And everyone's going to have to deal with that and excel at it, or they could be quickly left behind.
So a lot of disruption. Sounds like it's very positive for maybe people trying to break into the market. If I'm an established player, like how do I protect my market leadership? How do I protect my position?
Yeah, I think the trick there is, from a technology perspective, not to be overshadowed too quickly. Typically what happens when you look at the industry is there are upstarts, and the upstart have to answer the question is, am I a viable long-term product, or am I ultimately a feature, right? You see this certainly in the security realm. We've seen it in covering software for decades. Something new comes out, but ultimately it's built into other platforms and other products. So, for the startup, it's how am I more than a one-hit wonder? If you're an existing company, it's how do I make sure that I'm not leaving the door open for someone to jump in and solve a particular problem? So what are those key problems I need to solve, and how do I communicate that to a buyer right now?
Yeah. So looking ahead at 2025, so obviously one trend is the disruption happening.
Yeah.
What else are you seeing in the research, whether it's state of the CIO or AI priorities? What trends should we expect in the year ahead?
Well, I think, I'm sure you've heard of the Gartner trough of disillusionment, where we have a lot of hype. I don't think we're heading into some big, ravine around AI, but I think people are going to be dealing with the realities of AI. We've seen from our sister company, IDC, the number of pilots, AI pilots, that go into production is kind of alarmingly small because people are really learning, right? So right now, if you're a buyer, and we'll talk about it from a couple perspectives, if you're a buyer, you're trying to figure out, where do I apply this technology where it makes sense? And there'll be a fair number of failures in that. And I've heard this from when I work with an external CIO group, and I've heard the members talk about this, which is it's very difficult to figure out what problems I should apply this to, right? There are lots of questions our company could answer, but were those the right questions to be asking, number one? Number two, do we have the information that would ultimately answer those? You can throw AI at a lot of things, and if you don't have the right data, you're not going to get the right answers. And then, how do we know whether we've actually solved the problem? Like, we have a whole new set of KPIs that we have to figure out having to do with these AI things. And then a problem that they talk about is, how do I make sure that I'm not working on something that just works for one department? Because I don't have the resources to solve a million little problems around. I'm looking for things that can be applied across the board, across departments. So those are all things that customers are learning as well. And they're going to be looking for a whole new set of tools to help them do that. So in the AI priority survey, for example, we saw a significant new investment in the underpinnings of technology to support that internally, whether that's infrastructure or cloud or new tools that allow us to present data and information in new ways, right? But on the flip side, you also, AI is two parts. There's stuff I'm going to build and there's stuff I'm going to buy. So on the buying side, they're also going through a trial period of learning, which is, I'm going to bring your product in-house, or I'm going to add it to, if I'm already using it, I'll bring these enhancements in-house. But if I'm going to pay for them, really need to understand that they are changing the game in some fashion. Otherwise, why am I paying for them? So let's take personal productivity, right? The tools we use for personal productivity, collaboration tools, tools for documents and other things. There are capabilities out there to make us more productive. We see funny ads on TV from Apple, for example, that can clean up your email. That idiot guy who sends the email to his boss that sounds like he's brilliant, when very clearly AI would tell us he should have been fired a long time ago. Companies are going to trial these things, and they're going to say it was worth it or it wasn't worth it. I mean, is it really worth $20 more an employee per month for that capability if all they're doing is transcribing things faster? So I think for the marketers, you're really going to have to show proof points around this stuff. It's not going to be enough to say, I have it. Mm-hmm. You're really going to have to show it's making a material difference in the lives of other customers. And so I think we'll see that in the coming year as well. So it's not disillusionment, it's more of a reality check, which is to say, we all agree still this is going to be amazing, but we all agree there's going to be a bunch of work to figure out how to make it amazing and get what we want out of it.
Now, in terms of, obviously AI is a priority, but just thinking to your head in terms of priorities and budgets for the CIO. And that's why I love talking to you, because it helps the marketer get in the mind of the CIO. AI is a priority. What other priorities are we seeing, or priorities underneath AI? I mean, I know you mentioned like infrastructure and cloud and new tools. How should marketers be aligning to what's important to the CIO and where the budgets are lining up next year? Or this year, I should say.
I think there's a couple things, right? When I talk to marketers, I try first to give the perspective of you're going into a noisy environment. And by noisy, I mean whatever you're solving is only one of the problems that an IT organization is trying to solve today. So when you look at that from the perspective of a CIO, at a very high level, the CIO role, and we see this in our State of the CIO, is continuing to evolve. They're trying to focus more on the business, right? To be that true C-level leader, which is focused on the business opportunity of technology. But in order to do that, they're trying to solve a number of problems underneath. One is modernization. So this term of technical debt, meaning we have underinvested, say, in technology for years, and our infrastructure really isn't in a position to do the things that we need it to do, particularly today, because AI enhances all these problems and opportunities. So that infrastructure modernization, application modernization, we need a new set of applications, and we need to develop applications better. That whole process needs to change. And we have to modernize our team, and this is an area where vendors really can provide a lot of help. If you look at the team today and you look at all of our surveys, what we see is we don't have the skills to do all of this new cool stuff. So we have a team that was brought up around managing infrastructure well, managing email well, keeping things available. Our metrics in the past have all been around availability, volume, right? We're supporting more people, we're doing more email, we're doing more, we're doing better number crunching faster, all of those kinds of traditional things. Well, really what we need now is people who are going to manage cloud better. They're going to know how to deploy cloud better, manage it, secure it, make multi-cloud a reality. That's a whole new set of skills that we need. Everything around AI and analytics. The big goal is we need to make better use of our data, but we need tons of skills around that. Everything from, I love this job, prompt engineer. That's the person who figures out how do you articulate a question that AI is going to answer well to get you something valuable out of it. But we also know about data scientists. We know about a whole set of roles behind data scientists, which is getting our data ready, cleaning it up, organizing it, making sure we have the right data. Tons of skills that we need in that space. If you look at AI priorities, you'll see where they're hiring, right? And even in marketing departments, you see, AI content people and AI illustrators and things like that. Where can we create content more efficiently? Where can we create imagery that we don't have to pay illustrators. We don't have to pay illustrators or writers to do, right? So that whole modernization of IT needs to happen as well. That's a great opportunity for vendors. They're not going to fill these roles easily or soon because they're all in demand and they're all expensive. So what do you do to help them? Look beyond the product. What are your professional services that help with planning, deployment, migration, integration, all of that stuff? How is your service and support changing? What automation are you providing? All those kinds of things. And then go back to partner ecosystem. How do your partners augment what you're selling? That makes the purchase safer, makes it feel more comfortable to people, because I know there's somebody in your ecosystem that can fill another gap that I have. So really thinking beyond the product to what else can you do. Otherwise, those obstacles around skills can slow purchases. We see that in our role and influence survey about the buying process. That's where things get slowed down. So we don't have the people to evaluate, to buy, to implement, right? Help them with those things.
Yeah, no, it's funny because my next question was how to kind of cut through that AI clutter with all the messaging out there, and it sounds like the skills gap's going to continue to widen with AI, and that's a huge challenge for CIOs. And if you, to your point, if you can address the skills gap through the services you can provide, going beyond the product, how your partner ecosystem can augment the product, sounds like focusing on those things help illustrate the point, of how we can help beyond just blanket AI messaging.
Yeah, and when I think about it, 100% agree with that. When I think about AI messaging, I think about, AI is a broad set of capabilities, but it's really underlying capabilities. What you're really marketing around is what problems are you solving for people faster, better. So let's take security vendors, right? So to say I'm AI enabled and bringing AI to bear, well, I could probably say that about my work. I'm trying to bring AI to bear. What are the security problems you're solving? We know there's a set of really difficult, intractable, seemingly, problems that people face in security. So security is an area that's marked by vast volumes of data being thrown at an organization. Every product is throwing off alerts, alarms, information about what's happening in your environment. Very hard for humans to correlate that data, parse that data, figure out what's real, what should be done. So thinking about security, which, how do you boost the productivity of the team? That's the problem, right? I've got to boost the productivity of the team, and I also have to get to threats faster. So that's really where you should be focusing the message. Like, how quickly can you sort through this data to figure out what a specific problem is, and how quickly can you resolve it, right? That's what people want to hear about. And to some extent, they wouldn't care if you were solving that with AI or you were using a teletype machine. If you can do those things, I want to hear about it because my team is strapped, takes too long to solve problems. And at some point, could you automate the responses to those so my team never has to get involved? That's another step. That'll involve some strategizing on the part of customers and vendors. But those are the kinds of things people want to hear about, not just AI.
Yeah, and I know you work with a lot of marketers on developing effective content, and we've seen through our research that there's a lot of content out there that's just not providing actionable insights to the IT buyers. What kind of content are you finding that is helpful to the IT buyers and being really successful for marketers? Yeah,
this is an area I'm pretty passionate about because I think there's huge opportunity here. So you look at our customer engagement survey. The good news is, and that's all about, the information people use, the advertising, events, podcasts, video, webinars, all kinds of things. But when you ask people, are you willing to trade your personal information for information that would help you during the buying process? Over 90% say yes. So that's the good news. People are willing to make that bargain with you. But what we see is it's sub 50% feel that what they got in return was, quote, actionable. It helped me in any way. And I think there's a couple things. One is not having information that's targeted at the right roles. So when you look at that buying process, people are involved at, CIO, CEO, CFO, line of business at the beginning when we're figuring out the wonderful part, which is what are we trying to do as a company? What are we trying to solve? What new product are we trying to build? When you get into the guts of the process and you try to translate that into, okay, is there anything out there that we can buy or are we going to have to build something? If it's the buy part, then it's really who's out there, what capabilities do they have, what differentiates them, and who am I going to bring back as a short list of suppliers? really what I find there is that that's more like a desert of information. There's a lot of high-level stuff, case studies. There's a lot of sort of, feel-good stuff about AI and other big things. But when you get into that guts where it's really departmental level IT, individual contributors who are security pros or network pros or analytics pros, that's where they're having difficulty finding the information that they need. Information that really says clearly, what do you do in a detailed way. Where people really fall apart is, how does it compare with competitors? You don't want to be bashing competitors, but I need to know what's different in how you're approaching the world.
Yeah.
And then tells me more about what does it take to buy it, deploy it, manage it. Am I buying it from you as a service or a product? Are you managing it or am I managing it? How do I get upgrades? And to the skills question that we were talking about earlier, who on the team is going to have to be involved in it? And do I have those people? And if not, how do you help me? So we see that in role and influence. People say, this is where the process can stall and we need better information in here, right? Those three phases: evaluate technology, evaluate products, choose a vendor.
Now, I like to see your role as kind of our secret sauce here at Foundry. We utilize you in a lot of, I think, innovative proposals and programs.
I am kind of liquidy.
I know that the challenge we often face is we're often operating under very tight timelines. So what advice do you have for marketers out there that are looking to leverage people like you or looking for innovative solutions? Like, how should they be working with vendors like Foundry to benefit themselves more strategically?
I'm really glad you asked this question because I have strong feelings about this. Been involved in a lot of responses to RFPs, and typically what we get is agency, vendor, or vendor alone has been working for months on messaging and key targets and all of that kind of stuff, what they want to accomplish. And then we'll get an RFP with maybe, if we're lucky, a week to respond to it, right? And that comes when we're in the middle of working on other things. So it can be really challenging. It's like, I want your best thinking. You have an hour. Come back to me with your best thinking. Really, what I'd love to see is more, let's get involved in the discussions up front, because we spend a lot of time talking to customers. So we have a really good feel for what customers are going to respond to. And it's difficult to shape things if we get to the point in the RFP process where you've already articulated what your messaging is, where we might have been able to help with the messaging, might have been able to help, and I say might meaning can, help with the messaging, help with the targets and which targets would be the right targets to reach, how to reach those, what kinds of things you could be saying and what kinds of messaging you could be using for sub-audiences, right? There's a big theme, but we can help with those other things as well. So it's really more of a partnership. Get us involved early enough so that we can brainstorm with you on what to do and not be rushed to come up with something based on an already predetermined direction at the last minute. Because I feel like then we're losing some of the opportunity to capitalize on our knowledge of the market and our conversations with people, right? And it's tough to do out of the box in a short time frame.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It just feels like that end of the process is so constricted when it's really so important to have that deeper conversation around, okay, let's not really understand what you're trying to do here.
And so obviously you're talking a lot with customers and that could help, but what other tools are you utilizing to help bring benefit to that message and strategic process earlier on to help craft a better message?
Well, I think even then, using our research to show in our research and then capitalizing on our partnership with IDC as well, their knowledge of the market, their analysts' insights into the market. I tend to cover the market, the whole market, but there are IDC analysts who are in-depth on slices of the market and have a depth of knowledge that's just so amazing, right? So we can also bring those kinds of capabilities to bear, but we can help you say, look, these are things we know from the research, from our conversations, from being out in the market with other competitors. These are the kinds of things that are really going to resonate with people, and these are the kinds of tools that we can use to bring those messages to bear.
kind of putting you on the spot here, but are there any specific examples that you can cite where, a customer, I should say a technology vendor brought us in early, we helped craft a message and that really resonated with the market and the program we brought to bear?
Yeah, I'd cite an example of AWS where they've worked really hand in hand with us on some of the partner marketing efforts to say, here's a particular set of partners that we're working with. Here's a couple of key goals that we're trying to achieve, messaging around, say, things like infrastructure modernization or migration, which we know is a big challenge for cloud buyers. But having those as conversations as opposed to, here's a spreadsheet, fill this out and tell us what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Right? Because then we can get in and say, okay, here's work we've done. Here's what we know about these audiences and these challenges. Let's shape that messaging together. High level, you've said those are, tech areas we want to attack. Now let's work on some messaging around that. And, we have another real secret weapon with Barbara Call and her content team here at Foundry, and they've just done a terrific job of saying, okay, if it's infrastructure modernization, here's a theme and how we can build on work that you've already done, right? So we're continuing, it's almost like another chapter in the story continues to build, strengthen, educate.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I mean, it's not amazing. It's pretty, rudimentary, I think, but just how important the messaging and content can be for driving pipeline results, right?
100%.
And a lot of people engage us just on, hey, we need leads or, we want outcomes. But if your messaging and content is not in line with what the customers need, I mean, somebody downloads a white paper and they get halfway through that first paragraph and they decide, I'm not going to read this white paper. It's not of any value to me. It's going to be really hard for that sales rep calling on that lead to convert
100%.
That, right? And I know that program you're specifically talking about drove tremendous results for AWS.
Yeah.
I've seen it. But I think it's because we really helped them align the message with our audience to help, at the end of the day, convert those leads into pipeline.
And that's fun, right? That's two strong partners. One saying, this is what we know. They know their products and capabilities. They know the partner set and the strengths and capabilities of the partners that they're trying to showcase. We know what resonates with these audiences from all the, I don't even know anymore how many events we do, but just take the event slice where we're constantly hearing from speakers and from audience members who are telling us what they're struggling with, what they're working on, what they're trying to accomplish. We see that in our research. We see that in our conversations with them in roundtables and other ways. So we understand that. And so that's a fun discussion to have with people to say, all right, you're trying to do this. Well, let me tell you what people are talking about right now and what we think is going to resonate. And even more importantly, here's how we build on what you've already done with us that was successful. We tackled those themes here. Let's enhance them or take a different path here to continue to grow the message, grow the audience.
So I know this is going to be a challenging year for a lot of IT organizations, especially with AI.
Yeah.
You and I have talked in the past about the pressure CIOs face, and burnout is, a real possibility for a lot of these IT leaders. What can the marketers be doing to be in a position of support? Right?
Yeah.
Whether, obviously they're trying to sell these CIO things, but we're here to help, and we're here to lower that level of stress that you might be facing this year.
So I think it can happen on a couple levels, and it depends on what kind of company you are. Certainly if you're one of the bigger companies in the market, a company that has a real established position in the market, there's a role to be a strategic partner. Strategic partner, this phrase probably predates me, and I've been doing this since 1983. But a strategic partner is one where the customer relies on you not only for products and services, they're relying on you for direction, because direction is unclear in many of these areas. We used to talk about 5-year planning in IT. I think if people could do 5-month planning now, that they would be pretty excited. But there's an opportunity in each of these areas to be viewed as a strategic partner, right? And that's where your guidance, both in individual meetings with the customer, but also in the thought leadership work that you do, can really help people understand what's ahead and plan better, right? So I think if you're bigger companies like AWS, Microsoft, Cisco, people that Google, people that really are stalwarts in the market, that opportunity still exists. And we know from our conversations that within areas like cloud, within areas like AI, within this, dramatically changing security environment, people don't feel like they have that strategic partner, or many of them feel like they don't have that strategic partner. But those companies can also, and smaller companies can also, really do what we talked about before, which is talk about the set of capabilities you have beyond the product, right? You can help in an individual area, providing that direction on, here's where we see our slice of the market going. So if for example, you're in storage, let's say you're a storage vendor, well, there's two things happening. One, there's a lot happening in cloud storage. If I'm going to do AI up there, I need to have a real understanding of, what are the capabilities up there that I need to have for these huge models that need to be trained, and trying to bring those models into production. But I also want to do more of that AI and machine learning within my own data center. So I really need to understand, how does my data center infrastructure how does it need to be modernized and changed to support that? So there's thought leadership that can happen there in your individual area of the market or your individual areas of expertise. But they also, they need to understand that partner ecosystem, as I mentioned. They need to understand, what planning capabilities, what professional services do you offer that help me with these things that can ease the load. So if I don't have a cloud architect, for example, really hard for me to understand what's coming and how do I prepare to use the cloud as an extension of my data center and my IT organization. But you can help me with that, right? You can help me do that planning. Then you can have, more automation, more professional, more service and support capabilities that are tuned to my needs today. Enhance those so I know when I buy, it's going to be much easier for me, because that takes the load off my mind. And then who are the partners that can augment this, that can easily be snapped into the puzzle to help me?
No, that's really helpful, because, in talking to Keith Shaw yesterday, we were talking about his show demo and how he's really having the demos focus themselves on use case.
Yeah.
And, I think from the marketer's standpoint, that's really important, but also to take a step back and just put yourself in the CIO's shoes and having a broader perspective of the challenges they're facing. So it's not just so product focused of solving a very specific problem, which is important, but also everything that goes around in terms of the implementation of that solution. Right? Yeah,
exactly.
So I think that's really good perspective. Before we part, and I get your lasting wisdom of advice to leave the audience with.
And by the way, I want to add something about Keith. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if it's still active, but Keith and a partner ran a website where they taste tested all these salty snacks. It was called taquitos.net, if I'm not mistaken.
Get out of here.
And they would trial all kinds of things, right? So for example, you can't believe how many versions of Pringles there are, or how many different versions of Doritos.
I do know the chips because I married a Canadian, and she always reminds me we don't have enough chip flavors here in the U.S.
Right. So when we worked together, when we were in an office together years ago, Keith was always bringing in different chips.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That he would get. I think it was really his scam to get chips from everybody. But they had these great write-ups on all of these different varieties, like
funny.
The versions they sell in Japan with many different flavors of Doritos or Pringles and stuff. So Keith is also, in addition to his tech expertise, he's an expert on your salty snack products.
I also learned he'd be an actor in his, he is acting on the side, but if he could do anything else, he'd be acting.
Yeah, he's great. And his wife worked with us as well, and I believe she has the acting bug a little as well.
All right, so just before I get to your advice though, anything in the surveys, the AI priorities, or State of the CIO we missed that you think is worth kind of mentioning before we end here?
No, I mean, one of the things that's been pretty consistent across the State of the CIO survey is this gap that I point out to marketers that they can really help with. So when we talk to CIOs about what they're working on today, a lot of it is what you would characterize as traditional IT functions. Mm-hmm. Again, modernizing infrastructure, dealing with security problems, trying to improve performance and optimize systems, managing expense, those kinds of things. When we ask where they want to be in 3 years, it's very business oriented, right? I want to be driving innovation, working more closely with line of business, creating opportunities to capitalize on our data, improving customer service. Mm-hmm. Great. Those are all things that really we all should be focused on. Those are the things that touch customers and change the bottom line for a company. But it's a gap, right? So you got to help them across this gap, and you can help them two ways. Aspirationally, you can show them what you're doing with other customers in those aspirational areas. Like, how are you helping people drive innovation? How are you helping people create new products and services, right? How are you helping them improve customer service? Case studies are great with that, understanding what's going on in key vertical industries, which we don't talk about enough, right? Because people live in verticals. What are you doing in those verticals that's changing the game for retailers, for people developing pharmaceuticals, for financial companies, manufacturers? So that's the aspirational end, right? That kind of messaging to show CIOs what's possible. And I think everybody should spend more time on that, because they're soaking that up, particularly in an AI age. What are people doing with AI? That's what they're asking. What are they doing with other things that's changing their lives? But then how do you clear the road of problems? Again, I go back to problems. People live in problems and opportunities.
Can you do both at the same time? Or
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would say not all vendors can do both. Some, are very technically.
Like you can create content that discusses
Absolutely.
both. How to clear the problems today while being aspirational about tomorrow.
100%.
Okay.
And that's what we were talking about earlier, role specific, right? So CIO lives in an aspirational and a practical world. As you get into more of the departmental and individual contributors within IT, they live really in the world of how do I enable opportunities and how do I solve problems, right? So they're really focused on, okay, here's our need, what are you doing to help me with that need? But that gap needs to be closed. And by the way, that gap really isn't closing as fast as we'd like to see when we look at state of the CIO over the past 3, 4, 5 years. Those answers really don't change. It's like we are still trying to get here. So help them with that. That's really, look at that context of, I'm trying to be someone who drives the business. Today I'm someone who, if you're toggling between supporting the business and driving the business, you have to do both, but really much more of it today is still focused on supporting. We want to get to driving, help us to do that.
Got it. So what's your last piece of advice for people on the road, John?
Last piece of advice for people on the road. Number one, there's nothing better than talking to customers, right? We spend a lot of time doing it. We can enable that through our roundtables and through surveys and through other things. So I would say hearing directly from customers about what they're wrestling with and how they view things like AI, you can't do enough of that. By the way, our events also provide a tremendous opportunity to do that. But I would say think about the world in that sense of problems and opportunities. It's not AI. It's not security. It's not cloud. Those are mechanisms for solving these problems or enabling these opportunities. We kind of get caught up in the glamour of those things, but really think about the world and those problems, opportunities. How do you help with both? How do you inspire and how do you solve, right? And that's really what I think people ought to be focused on. And by the way, to your earlier question, that's something that we really help people with in conversations. So having those conversations, even if it's just an initial brainstorm, and we do this, we just sit down with somebody and say, what are you working on?
Yeah.
And how can we help? Love to do those kinds of things because ideas spawn out of that can be ahead of or in place of an RFP process.
I love it. I think that's great advice. And by the way, you were the very first recording I did for this show. Yeah, I think your episode premiered 3rd or 4th, but sitting down with you was the very first time.
And I have to think it only got better from there.
I hope so.
Right? It's like I'm the first on the greatest hits album. Pig. I'm the first song before you get into the really major hit that you had. Right?
That was about 38 episodes ago.
It's unbelievable. You've done congratulations. You've done a great job with this. I like listening to the episodes.
I've learned a lot listening to people like yourself. And
well, you've had a lot of really smart marketing people on here, and I love. It's strange. I came out of the journalism and the technology side, but I actually love marketing because that connecting the dots to buyers it's such an important skill set. And in many cases, it's meant the difference between success and failure. I mean, there's no end to the number of innovative startups that never went anywhere because they never figured out how to communicate the story.
Yeah.
Right? And even big companies struggle with that when they go through transitions. So to hear from really savvy marketers about how they take everything a company's doing, all their skills, all of their product sets, all of their knowledge, and they translate that into something that makes somebody understand them better and really understand what they're trying to do. It's a terrific skill set, and I'm always in awe of people who can do that well.
Yeah. Well, cheers. Thank you so much for coming on, John.
What a pleasure. This time it's black coffee. I like the Cabernet more.